not PTSD, PST. Okay, perfect square trinomial. Remember I told you for that homework, you wouldn't necessarily have to use it. You could still group it, but there would come a point in time when you would have to be able to recognize it. You are at that point in time now. All right. Huh? I said I'd give you some extra practice with it.
What job is this now?
I didn't say I wasn't going to continue moving.
Another lesson on a Friday, and I won't be able to do the homework. I mean,
Yeah, like, I'm still stuck on last night's, I mean, not last night's stuff, but like, that last one with like the factoring in the eyes.
So y'all need to come in there and SLT.
No, I can go fast, I agree.
All right. Looking at this problem. Right off the bat, I hope you recognize that the left side is a perfect square trinomial as it sits. Okay, and I show you this, they're not going to be set up this easily for you to start with, but I want to show you why it's important that you recognize them and why they're so convenient as we solve. If you look at the left side, if you factor a perfect square trinomial, how does it factor? How does this one factor? How does this factor?
I would just do that. No way.
That's exactly right, Fatima. X plus 3 squared equals 36, right? Because this is a perfect square, this is a perfect square, and the middle is the product. Remember we talked about this yesterday and the day before? Maybe just yesterday. The product of the square roots doubled, right? X times 3 is 3x, and 3x doubled is 6x. Are y'all all with me on that? All right. Do you see how it's factored here? This means yes, this means no. Or we can just stare at the board and pout. That'll be fine too. I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. I'm used to the pouting. Okay, so here, if I want to solve this, okay, whenever I solve an equation and there's only one x in it, I can use SADMAP. Backwards PEMDAS, just like you solve any other equation, okay? The reason this is convenient to do here is because there is no, I don't have to make it equal 0. I don't have to go through and refactor or anything like that. Because there's only one x, it is a lot easier if I just come here, knowing that what's inside parentheses comes last. I'm going to handle the exponents first. And square root both sides. I get x plus 3 equals, what's the square root of 36?
6,
Close.
9, 3. Plus or negative?
Plus or minus 6, right? Because it could be 6 times 6 or negative 6 times negative 6. Now it's an easy solve for x, right? Yes, it is. I can just subtract the 3 from both sides. So I get negative 3 plus or minus 6. Which is what? What two answers do I get here? Negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9. And negative 3 plus 6 is positive 3. That's exactly correct. Okay.
Yeah, can we just
Sometimes, but maybe not.
can we just minus 36 at the beginning of the problem and get x plus 6 plus whatever it is?
Say that one more time.
Can we just subtract 36 at the beginning of the problem and just do it the factor way?
No, because you're going to have to solve by completing the square. And completing the square means it's not going to be set up this way, but we're going to find the number here that makes it a perfect square trinomial so that we can follow suit here. Okay? All right. Let me show you one more that's already a perfect square trinomial so that you get, because the point is that this is an easy solve too. It's another way to solve. And to answer your question, Cawthon, try to factor, well, actually, this one will factor because it's perfect answers. Most of the time when we're completing the square, it's not factorable. And so this is another tool in our tool belt to help us solve quadratics. Remember, we can graph, we can find the zeros, we can factor and solve, but sometimes neither one of those two things are feasible, and so I need another method. And this is a method that will always work. Sometimes it's kind of nasty, but it will always work. Okay? Let me show you one.
I don't get how you do negative 3 plus minus 6 without moving
What's negative 3 minus 6? So, this is negative 3 minus 6, and this is negative 3 plus 6, because it's literally plus or minus. Do one as a plus and one as a minus. How you get what?
I can do examples.
Which part?
There's no use in stopping.
Yeah, there is, because I bet somebody else doesn't understand if you don't.
Okay, so like, in the original equation, you have x to the second plus
Uh-huh.
6x, and then you got x plus 3.
Okay, so this
How do
is,
you get 6x?
because it's squared here, so it's really, if you factor it out, it's x plus 3, and if you FOIL it out, the 6x will come back out. It's that special pattern, that perfect square trinomial. Other questions about this one before we go? Don't be scared to ask. All right, let me show you another one. Again, we're not completing the square yet. Right now, the ones we're doing, the square is already completed because they're already perfect square trinomials. I'm going to show you how to complete the square. All right, let's look at this one. These are easy to start with, just getting you used to solving here. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be a perfect square on the other side. But looking at this, when I say the square is completed, what I mean is this already forms a perfect square trinomial. Do you all see that? Okay. The ends are both perfect squares. The second sign is a plus, and if I do the square roots of the ends multiplied and doubled, I get what's in the middle. Okay. So how does this factor? X minus 6 squared. You're always picking up that first sign.
So we don't even,
Wait,
so
so
the
all you
12x.
do is like cut the x squared and 12x in half.
There you go. Look in white. That's that pattern we learned yesterday. If the two ends are perfect squares, the second sign is a plus. Take the square roots of the ends, multiply and double, you get what's in the middle. Then it's an easy factor. I can factor it this way. Okay, it also works if it's a plus. Remember yesterday y'all were like, I'm not going to learn that, I'm just going to group. And I said, well, that's fine, but that'll work on that lesson, but not the lesson when we complete the square. You'll have to be able to recognize it. And this is why. All right, so now what do I do? How do I solve that? Square root. Positive or negative 5. It literally means x minus 6 could be positive 5 and x minus 6 could be negative 5. So 11 and 1. Think about this with me for just a minute. This is not another problem. This is something else.
If
I'm looking at this.
That looks like a chemistry symbol.
What do I need to put in the blank?
25,
Why?
because 5, because it just does. It just
5
needs to be.
squared
Okay.
equals 10. 5 squared equals 10, right?
What is gonna make it a perfect square
It
trinomial?
has to be double. So like,
It has to be double the outside. No,
No,
the
the
first
inside.
number has to be double the middle number. Is that correct?
no.
You're be x
You're
plus
dumb.
5.
The square of the first and, the root of the first and last number multiplied together.
81.
It has to be double that in
Guys,
the
stop with the floor thing. That's childish. I mean, I expect as much with y'all's behavior today, but
81.
why?
Because 9, it just is.
It just is. Tell me what you're doing. Okay, wait. Give me one more before you tell me what you're doing in your head.
Alright.
I don't know what I don't understand how
I'm on.
9.
No, there is a 1. There is a 1.
Nothing.
The square root of 25 is
What
what?
time is what?
Because there's not anything lower than.
Can it be 3 or no?
No, can it be a decimal?
5 times 2 is
It can be a decimal.
1 point.
So, what's
1.5. No.
1.5 times 2 is.
If it was 9,
9 times 2 is what?
if it was 9, the middle number has to be 6.
I'm hearing lots of good conversation, and I think y'all are getting to the.
Wait, okay, so
1.5.
2.25.
6 minus 3.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me what you did?
I multiply 1.5 by 1.5 because 1.5 plus 1.5 is.
Okay, so here's what I want you to do. If you don't understand it just yet, it's okay, because what my goal was, instead of, give me that as a fraction, Coffin.
I don't know. I don't. My phone won't do it.
2 and 2 and 4.
No, it's.
Oh.
How do you know that?
Alright, listen, y'all stay with me.
I can explain.
Your
this.
complaints tend to fall on deaf ears when you don't pay attention in class, or when you talk and you do things you're not supposed to. If you give me 100% and then you don't understand, I'm a little more sympathetic. But when you don't give me 100% and then you complain you don't know, well then I know why you don't know. Alright. Generalize this, those of you who are getting these numbers and you know how you're getting them, make me a general statement as to how I could always find that number there.
So the square root of that number has to add those two numbers.
I raised my hand.
Okay. Go ahead, Robert.
So,
Robert
did you
raised his hand
raise-
before you.
I did get
Yes.
in here, ma'am.
Come on.
So the middle number that has an x.
Okay, so with ax squared plus bx plus
You
c.
divide b.
B, okay,
You divide b
Yes.
by 2,
okay.
right? And then you find the answer. Like after you divide that, right? You
Let me explain this. I can
no,
explain
just, I'm
this.
trying to figure out the word.
Hey, no, I can
You find
explain
the
this.
square root of that number.
Close.
No, the opposite of square root. What is it?
What is it? Dylan, what is it?
Square. Find the square.
Square. Thank you. The only thing I get it either.
It's just like what we did with factors.
What you gotta do is you gotta get the square root of A and C and make sure that they equal.
Right, but what I
Yeah.
want is I want a formula for finding C.
Oh.
Okay? So there's your formula for finding C. Okay? Do you agree that every single time that will give you a C that forms a perfect
Only if
square
X is
triangle?
1. If A is
Oh,
1.
good job. Only if A is 1, okay? So as we do this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure A is 1 every single time, and that's
You
important
can
to
still do
remember.
it.
You have to
It's
make it
not.
one.
You could, but it's gonna be really nasty. We're gonna get rid of A to start with, and then we're gonna
So we
follow
have to
this,
make it
okay?
one. So we
Yeah.
have to simplify it.
That's gonna be our first step, but I want you to see why.
Well, shoot, if we make a 1, finding the zeros is already.
We're,
Divide.
if it factors. Are you gonna factor that?
Not, no.
You see what I'm saying? If it factors, yes, okay, yeah.
Ava,
All
what
right,
is
shh, shh, shh. All right, stay with me. Here we go, we're gonna complete the square.
Complete that square.
somebody come get it.
No, shut the freak up.
You did have it.
I'm putting a note here that says note A, okay? That has to be the first thing you look at, that you don't have an A in front, right?
What is?
Because if I do, girls, y'all are complaining you don't understand, and I'm explaining it right now.
What's CTF?
So, complete the square.
What you do is 1.
Okay, well, that's what I mean, no A, but it's 1. All right. Is this factorable the way it sits?
Oh, no.
No, it's not.
I mean,
Let me give you one that's not factorable to start.
Yes, it is factored.
It is
I mean,
factorable.
if you 1.
I couldn't tell you.
Do you agree with this?
Oh, yeah, it's 11, yeah.
Let me give you one that's not factorable, not factorable. Let's do x squared. We'll go easy to start with. Minus 6x. All right, factorable or not?
Well, that looks.
Yeah, no.
Is there anything in the whole wide world that multiplies multiplies to -3 but adds to -6.
No.
No.
I thought you were asking if we can solve that.
How was somebody
wait.
gonna say yes if you literally just
Okay.
said don't give me?
Factorable meaning can you factor it?
No, you can't.
Okay, no. You cannot factor it. Guys, this is what frustrates me.
My test.
You complain to me, but then you don't listen when I explain it. Of course you don't understand. Again, I know how to do this. The question is to you, because I'm not standing up here for me, I'm standing up here for you. If you don't have enough respect to even be quiet enough to listen,
I didn't even know.
all right.
Didn't you back out 3?
No, because the first term doesn't have a 3.
No, we have.
Oh, you're right. I'm done.
Right. All right. So do we all agree this term is keeping it from being factorable?
Yes.
Get rid of it.
Add.
How can I get rid of it?
Yeah.
Add it. Let's put it on the other side and let's not look at it right now, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to call this a bad C. Okay? I'm going to call it a bad C because it's keeping my trinomial from being factorable. Okay? So now I have x squared minus 6x. Leave a little space though, because I'm going to use my new little formula here to find one that does make it good. Okay? But because this is an equation, if I throw something in on the left-hand side, I'm going to also have to throw it in on the right-hand side.
It's not.
Okay?
Well,
So several of you are saying you've already found it, that it's 9. We're going to find the good C by doing B over 2.
wait, would it be -9?
Yeah, no. So six,
Okay, so-
6 times 2 is positive 12, right?
Actually, it's not opposite, no matter. C is 6 over 2, and if you do negative, that's fine, but you're squaring it. So what happens when you square a negative number? It's going to always be positive. And that also, think about our PSTs always have to have a plus sign as the second sign.
PTSD is not very positive.
All right,
Okay, what now? This is a lot of stuff.
9.
No, like, I keep them
Okay.
all in now.
All right. So what we're doing is we're forcing it to be a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to put this 9 here, but because I'm an equation and I need to stay balanced, I'm also going to put it here. Okay. Once you have this done, it's downhill from here. Okay. Factor the left side.
Before you, may I ask, where did you get that 2?
Sure.
That goes under?
That's the formula we came up with. Remember we said take the middle and divide by 2 and then square.
So that'd be x minus 3 squared.
So this would be, that's exactly right, x minus 3 squared. What does it equal?
Oh, 12.
Now this looks like the problem we did in the very beginning. Do you agree?
Yes, and then you just square rooted it.
Square root both sides.
You can't square root 12 though.
You can't, but that's okay. We're going to leave our answers exact. No decimals here. Decimals are bleh.
So,
All right, x minus 3 equals plus or minus, don't forget that. What's the square root of 12?
I literally don't.
4 and 3, right?
Yeah, honestly, it's a really dumb question, but I totally forgot how, like, which number you use on that stuff.
One of them's got to be a perfect square when you break it up.
So it should be 2 times.
Well, I mean, I got
Yes.
like all of them wrong with that, so that's cool. I'm not serious.
Is it solved for x?
No.
No. I'm going to add this 3. Some of you are looking a little bit confused at this step. You're not going to combine them. This is a perfectly acceptable way to write an answer. If it's not a perfect square, you can leave it just like that.
Do we put plus 3 in the back, or is that the other part?
You can put it in the back. If you do plus or minus 2 root 3 plus 3.
If that was a perfect square though, then we would just square it down and.
And find the 2
Well,
answers.
so you don't wanna do, you don't want.
No.
Well, you can't.
No,
You do a
no.
decimal. Square root of 3 is an irrational number.
I
Yeah.
got it, I can do it.
Lucas.
Why do I have what? I added this 3 to both sides. All right. Now listen. This starts getting hard. There's 2 ways this starts getting difficult. First thing is if there's a coefficient in front. And we're going to do one like that. We're going to have to divide both sides by that value to get rid of it. Okay? The second way it gets hard is if this number is not divisible by 2. Like that very last one where we had 3, we had to do 3 over 2 squared, which is 9 over 4, and it gets sticky, okay? Those are the 2 scenarios where completing the square really gets nasty, okay? Let's do one more, and let's do one with a leading coefficient and an odd. Yeah.
Leading coefficient and an argument.
Hey, but you guys move the dark one.
Do you think you could have imaginary solutions this way? Sure you could.
No,
If this 12 was negative, I'd end up with 2 imaginary solutions. Yes, you would, Dylan.
Okay, we'll do that, Nick. I wanna know how, so I forgot.
Okay, we'll do an imaginary one then.
No, just put negative in there and just go from there.
If this were negative, this would just be 2i root 3. The negative, you just drop the negative and put an I out front.
Cause it'd be square root of -4 or square root of -3.
No, if it's square root of negative 12, this comes out. That's the first thing you do.
Right.
And so then I have, this is 4 and 3,
And you can square root of 4, so it's 2.
but this I is still a part of it, so you put it here.
Oh.
The I is just saying those are negative there.
I wouldn't know how to write it though.
This is crazy that we're done.
Alright, time for homework?
I'll fix it.
I want to do a hard one with you.
Yeah, let us do it though. Let us do it.
Challenge us.
Wow, and do it.
I'm charming.
I challenge you to a duel. Hey, man, what make it good?
I'm glad y'all are having a swell time.
I've been quiet.
What do you guys think?
You can just take away the 2, because 0 divided by 2 would be 0. So just go ahead and take away the 2. I was surprised you didn't do one with the number on the actual other side, to where we didn't keep it.
Stop reading, please.
Can we do this?
Why did you?
We're dividing it by 2.
Yeah.
This one's tough.
You're dividing the whole thing by 2? Why?
Just
Will we
let
put
it-
it in fraction?
Get rid of that,
You can't have an A.
Miss McGee has to be in fraction?
Oh,
No decimals, fractions, exact
That is
answers.
kind of tough.
Just try it. Shut up.
You sure you go home? Miss McGee, Miss McGee, are you ready to go home?
No. No, stop.
All I did was divide everything by 2.
I literally.
Wait, I did decimal.
No decimals.
Why?
No decimals, because you're going to end up with not a right answer.
We're gonna get 9 right
You're gonna get non-right answer either way.
I did, it was 2x to the second when I divided by 2.
You're literally not.
So where do we go from here?
Just try it by yourself.
So, all right. This is clearly a bad C. It's not a perfect square. If it's not a perfect square, there's no point in even checking anything any further. It's bad. Okay? So I'm going to move it. So I have x squared minus 7 over 2x. Remember, I'm going to find something good to go here. So I'm going to leave a space. It's going to equal negative 5 over 2 plus whatever that good thing is that I'm going to find. Now, again, I'm a little bit because I've got not only a number that's not even, but I've got a fraction in the middle. And I have to divide by 2 and I have to square. Right? Yuck. But, yeah.
If that were to be negative 5 over 2, would that be x squared minus 7 over 2x minus that blank?
It's always going to be plus that blank every single time.
49 over 100?
16.
I'm going to multiply by a half instead of dividing by 2.
I got it.
So I get 7 over 4, but now I have to square it, so it's going to be 49 over 16.
I literally did.
Right?
Yeah.
49.
Wait, why should you do it by hand? Do that thing with
Is it non-negative?
Always going to be positive. When you square a negative, it becomes positive.
Okay, now.
So wait, why did you do it by half instead of 2?
Dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by half. If you've already got a fraction, you don't want to do a fraction in a fraction. Okay?
the fractions time out.
All right, on the left, this is an easy factor, or it should be. Remember, when I don't have to check to see is it a perfect square trinomial now, because I know it is. I followed the formula, it is. I take the square root of the first number, I take the first sign, and I take the square root of the last number. Now look, the square root is what you got before you squared it. So it's 7/4 squared equals, now here's where you might have to use your calculator.
Negative 2/3.
No, it's there before.
Definitely negative 2/3.
49/16
Yes, but,
minus 5/2.
oh, you go that far.
Math, enter.
It's not,
What did you do?
yeah, I'm my bad. I was doing it when you started.
Put the fractions in parentheses on your calculator, okay? And then hit math, enter after you add them.
What were you trying to find?
So is it X minus?
So 9/16, this side right here,
Uh,
So that's on the equal sign.
okay? I'm gonna,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So why did you add the 49/16 into that?
I did the square root of each end
wait, why did you add 49/16 to the other side?
because it's an equation. I added it here,
Oh,
so I had to also add it here.
That's right.
It's got to go to both sides.
So what's the equal? 9/16.
Square root both sides. X minus 7/4 equals plus or minus, remember, but look, these are both perfect squares. What's the square root of 9?
3.
What's the square root of 16? When I move this 7/4, I got 7/4 plus or minus 3/4. If you got to that point, I am A-okay with that, okay? You could go ahead and say, oh, well, this is 7 plus or minus 3/4, make it one fraction. And you can say 10/4 or 4/4, okay? And you can get those two answers that way. If you can get to this point with a nasty problem like that, it will not get any harder than this. This is as hard as it gets.
Wait, how did you get 7 plus or minus 3/4?
How'd I get what?
The bottom thing? 7 plus or minus 3/4? No,
Here.
the bottom one.
Oh, this one, because they have the same denominator, I can combine the numerators.
So 10/4.
If you had 7/4,
I get what you're saying.
okay.
I get it.
Right?